Hi again, and welcome to the final episode of Hello CISO. I'm so glad that you have joined us for the ride, and it's now time to jump into the very last topic on creating security training that is actually useful. Here's a quote from Abraham Lincoln, which I think applies pretty well here. He said, "Give me 6 hours to chop down a tree, and I'll spend the first 4 hours sharpening the axe." In the same spirit of that quote, I remember an old friend I used to work with often saying that we were too busy chopping down trees to sharpen the axe. And I guess the sentiment of both quotes is that people require investment. Training, security training in this case, is the investment that we need to make in our people. In the same spirit, a good security training program doesn't start with the training itself. Training is the outcome of a longer process. The sharpening the axe part of the equation is asking yourself why you're implementing or revamping a security training program to begin with. I see 2 reasons to do so. One reason is to cover your basis. There is a compliance officer somewhere, and they have a lot of boxes to check. And security training is often part of that box-checking exercise. If that is your goal, you probably don't need my help in this instance. Another reason, however, is to actually improve security. And I think that is a much more interesting area because it leads to positive outcomes in your cybersecurity things. 1Password's senior security specialist has been talking about this a lot lately, and she breaks it down into 4 key areas. The first is fostering open communication between the security team and the rest of the organisation. You want to create a culture where people are happy to come to you with reports. The second comes down to just simply having reasonable expectations. If security becomes burdensome, or if it's perceived as being unnecessary, over the top, it's going to be much harder to get buy-in from the rest of the organisation. Third is showing appreciation when people do submit security reports. You want to be open and receptive. I'd much rather have 10 false positives than 1 false negative. The last area is providing people with the tools they need to make informed decisions. Now, training is inevitably one of those tools. You need to help people understand what the right thing is so they can do the right thing. So why does all this matter? Well, because the training will only be effective if people care. You need to get people enthusiastic about security. Enthusiasm creates a much more fertile ground for them spotting things that perhaps should be reported, and then speaking up and leading the organisation to a much better security posture. Once you can cultivate a culture of enthusiasm, you can begin to shape your training curriculum. Now, what many organisations do is focus a lot on rule-based training. They outline very specific circumstances and teach people how to respond to each of those given scenarios. The problem with rule-based training is that it doesn't teach people how to apply what you've taught them to different scenarios. So you're covering phishing and you teach people to watch out for scenarios X, Y, and Z. What happens when they encounter scenario W? Do they know how to respond to something that's outside the strict definition of what they've already been taught? The alternative to rule-based training is to teach people critical thinking. So rather than teaching them what to think, you're teaching them how to think. So for example, running certain scenarios and teaching them how you might respond in different styles of scenario. You can do this by teaching people how to be mindful about security as they go about their job, to have it be a part of their normal daily operations, as opposed to some set of rules that sits over here and they probably should follow them. I always like to talk to organisations about security being a shared responsibility, about everyone in the company having a role to play. You could be the most junior person in the organisation and you see something that should be reported. Likewise, you could be the CEO, you could be the person right up the top of the tree. What I'm really getting at here is to make security part of the normal operation of the organisation as opposed to something that is an afterthought or somebody else's responsibility. It's a shared responsibility, and let's help people all be aware of it as they go about their normal working lives. Now let's talk about creating the actual training itself. Now this can be very organisational specific. If your company is weak in a particular area or especially vulnerable in a particular area, then that's obviously a good place to start, and that may differ to the training that's done in other companies. Do also look at the specifics within your organisation in terms of your people's behaviour. So, for example, is there a lot of password reuse or possibly a lot of weak passwords being used? Should you perhaps make sure that you do include that module on how to use a password manager? In the course of identifying your vulnerabilities, you may even find some existing policies which perhaps need a little bit of a tweak. This could be a great outcome of the training. You might find that you're able to actually improve some of your policies, make them more practical, more real world, more tailored to your specific organisation. And that's a really positive outcome along with the actual training itself. Now let's talk about tailoring your security training to different types of learners. And we all have our different preferences for the way we like to learn. I like to be very hands-on. Other people are very visual. They'd like to sit there and watch a video. Yet others again would like to read the content and go through it at their own pace. So understand who your audience is and how it is that they like to learn. Getting into the finer points of all those different learning styles is beyond the scope of this video, but I'll give you a few little tips while we're here anyway. For people who like to learn visually, perhaps you need some graphs in your slides, other images, things to keep you enticed visually. For folks that learn by repetition, you might find written word is better. They can take it away, sit there in their own time, read it over as many times as they would like. There are those who would prefer to learn in a group, and that's fine, you can all get together in one room. Then there are those who like to learn in isolation, and perhaps then you just need a mechanism by which they can come back and ask questions later on. There are a few things you can do to make your presentation material much easier to learn. And the first one is keep it concise. Focus on the key points. We've all seen presentations before that are just walls of bullet points, and that stuff really doesn't stick. Particularly the things in the middle. People tend to remember the ending of anything, the ending of a piece of training, the ending of a movie. So make sure that that key point sits down there at the end and emphasize it over and over again if necessary, so that your audience gets what's most important. Leave behinds are also a popular way of reinforcing learning. Now, if you're doing this online, that may simply mean sending a PDF around after the training. Perhaps they don't remember one specific thing, so they just open up the document and they Control F and they find the content they need. So giving something that they can take away and search through digitally is enormously valuable. One thing that I've always found really, really useful when it comes to either professional training that I do or security talks is trying to find real-world examples. Not just hypothetical bullet points, but show people this is what has happened. We've got so many industry precedents of all sorts of different security incidents that you've got a heap of stuff to choose from. Another thing that I find really resonates with audiences is demonstrations. I used to do things like use a Wi-Fi pineapple, a device which could broadcast known SSIDs that people's own mobile devices had seen before. And I'd put them up on the screen and people would see their home network there. And suddenly it would hit home that their devices are roaming around broadcasting all the networks I've seen before. The engagement I got out of audiences by physically showing them things, real world things, practical things, was absolutely second to none. Finally, conduct training often. It's going to be very hard for people to recall what they learned a year ago, so you might find a more regular cadence gives you a lot more value. In particular, I like the idea of continuous security training. So training which appears throughout the year, not just once a year so that you can check the compliance box, but training that people encounter at any given moment. For example, many organisations use continuous phishing training, where at any time employees could receive an email that for all intents and purposes looks like a phishing attack, but it's actually part of a simulation. That helps people regularly think about the fact that phishing is an important issue for the organisation. Training that's done with very large pauses in between, such as the annual security and compliance training, does very much come back to that first of the two reasons I mentioned earlier on, the box ticking exercise. The compliance officer is happy. You have achieved the annual training, everybody has passed. But does it actually have much impact? Does it make a big difference if you just do it once a year? I don't think so. I think it needs to be much more regular and ideally continuous. Good security programs don't happen overnight. It takes practice. It takes a lot of introspective reflection about what is it that the organisation actually needs. How do our people work? Where are our blind spots? What needs to be focused on? It also requires enthusiasm. You have to create that willingness within people to be a part of the solution, to be part of the shared responsibility that is security. And as I said earlier on, as you create more enthusiasm, you get more people more invested in the process. Enthusiasm creates the fertile ground that people need to learn better. And the final thing I'd add on this is that security training does need to be not only continuous but iterative. It needs to be refined over time because you'll find ways to make it better for your organisation. And also over time, you'll find the security landscape changing. There are new threats that you need to adapt to, new defences which might influence the way you run your security training. So be flexible and continue to improve over the course of time. That's how you build security training programs that are actually useful. On a final note, thank you so much for watching this series. It's been fun for me to get up here on my soapbox and talk about all the things that are near and dear to my heart that I hope you can tell that I love talking about as well. I hope it has been useful for you, and I hope it allows you to do your job better and to make cybersecurity a more important topic within your organisation. If you'd like to hear more from me, please follow me on Twitter at Troy Hunt, or you can follow my blog and the weekly videos I do each and every week without fail. That's all over at troyhunt.com. And finally, a big thanks to 1Password for helping to make this possible. Putting training like this out there for everyone simply to make cybersecurity better across the world. Thanks everyone for watching. I'm Troy Hunt, and I hope I see you again very soon. If you've enjoyed this video as part of the Hello CISO series, then please give it a like and subscribe to the 1Password YouTube channel for more videos like this.